Did you know that there's 5 training paths for uneven bars? And when an athlete learns these 5 training paths, they go from 0 to elite level skills. And it's actually very straightforward. So instead of thinking about bars as if there's hundreds of different skills or even just tens or 20 different skills, you can look at it like there's 5 different paths. And when you go down these paths, you collect the skills along the way. So I'm going to break it down for you and make it a lot easier to understand. The 5 training paths are Kip Cast Handstand, Tkatchev Family, Giant, Turning, and Double Layout Flyaway. So let's dive in and see what we got going on here. With a Kip Cast Handstand, you're going to find that this is the starting point. And this is a kind of a crazy starting point to think about in the Kip Cast Handstand. We're going to just watch it again. In that it takes a lot of strength, a lot of coordination, a lot of timing to get to that Kip Cast Handstand. Here's what I want you to consider. What if you spent all the time you're doing unnecessary bar skills on developing the Kip Cast Handstand? Now, bars would be pretty boring. It would be very uninteresting. However, would you get to the Kip Cast Handstand sooner? And how quickly could you develop the Kip Cast Handstand would be a question to be asking yourself, so that you could actually unlock the entire event on bars. Because typically, it takes so long for an athlete to develop the Kip Cast Handstand that they don't really unlock bars till much later on in their gymnastics career. But if you could unlock bars early on in your gymnastics career, the whole entire sport just gets easier. So let's look at this. We have a Kip Cast Handstand, okay? And what we want to look at for just a thing is we have a glide. Now, with the glide is there's a jump push that has to happen on the bars. You're pushing on the bar. There's an extension. No, we don't want to explain. Good point. We don't want to explain. Okay. Just want to pause and then get out of it. In this video, I'm going to talk about the 5 training paths for uneven bars. There are only 5 paths that you need to take an athlete down to get proficient on the event. You don't need to look at the event like there's multiple skills, like there's hundreds of different skills, lots of different drills. You don't need to get overcomplicated. You chase the 5 different paths and you collect the skills along the way. So what are these 5 different paths? Well, the 5 different training paths are Kip Cast Handstand, Tkatchev Family, Giant, Turning, and Double Layout Flyaway. When you chase these 5 paths, you're going to collect every skill you need along the way. Now, in this video, I am not going to be talking about the breakdown of the skills themselves, but I'm going to show you how skills kind of build down these paths to make things a little bit easier. So let's look at this. We got the Kip Cast Handstand. Nice glide, extension, handstand. Kip Cast Handstand. Here's another young lady doing Kip Cast Handstand. Okay, so Kip Cast Handstand, this is a very challenging skill for most athletes to get. This is not the easiest skill, I would say, in any regard, that when you learn it, oftentimes it can take months. And if we're really being honest, it would take years, because typically if an athlete starts gymnastics, from the moment they start the sport of gymnastics till when they get the Kip Cast Handstand, it's more than likely for most people going to be years, because for one, the coach is not even developing the Kip Cast Handstand when the athlete first starts gymnastics. And so that right there becomes the first problem. If you think about when an athlete enters the gym and how quickly they start developing the back handspring and how quickly they are learning a back handspring, which is, in comparison to a Kip Cast Handstand, pretty much the same, equal in value, where back handspring on floor, on beam, and on vault is just highly important. And then you take the Kip Cast Handstand, and that's highly important. And how quickly an athlete is given the opportunity to learn the back handspring, and yet how slow and how long it takes for an athlete to develop the Kip Cast Handstand, I do not think they're given equal value, the same type of importance. And so that really needs to be addressed. So let's keep going though. We got the Kip Cast Handstand, okay? So let's look at just at a kip. Young lady doing a kip. I'm not going to really break this down, but I just want you to show you that the differences, the challenges that come along with learning a kip. It's not always the easiest. In other videos, I'll break this down on what you can do. But here's someone learning a kip, and here's what the kip needs to look like, right? Then we have the cast to handstand. So we got a cast going to 45-ish. Okay, she's going to struggle with getting to the cast to handstand. We got the cast going up to handstand from a nice jump to support drill. And there you have your cast to handstand. Again, Kip Cast Handstand, trying to develop into something along these lines. So that's the first thing. Then we got Tkatchev Family. There's our straddle Tkatchev from a giant. We got the piked. Now, everything has a different name. I get that. But we identify these as basically being Tkatchevs. And yes, they all have different names. I get that. But for simplicity's sake of understanding the sport, this is just Tkatchev Family. Now, we just went from a Tkatchev from a giant to basically a Tkatchev from a toe on. And so now we're circling around the bar. I call it in-bar circling. It's not technically in-bar circling, but I just think when you're in a support circle, it's like you're initiating the in-bar. Okay, so now we have support circling into the same family. So that would lead us then to say, okay, so I've got my Kip Cast Handstand. We need that for step one. That's our first path. Then we get into Tkatchev Family. This becomes basically, how can I do a Tkatchev, which then turns into how do I do an in-bar or a support circle into a Tkatchev, right? And let's, I mean, look at this. This is clear hip into a Tkatchev stretch body. So that becomes then the, okay, how do I get to there? I mean, if you could do that, it's going to be pretty easy. So that then stays in line with what a shaposh essentially is. And I know that's not a shaposh, but it's a shaposh family. And so now we get into, okay, a Tkatchev goes up, and now we have a shaposh that travels horizontally. It's the same exact action. It's the same exact throw. Look at the positioning. Look at the throw. It's the same throw. It's just traveling horizontally, not vertical enough. And so it travels. It's the same throw. It's just an in-bar circle that throws. So now we're just basically talking about, can I clear hip to handstand? That's just the next question. Can you clear up to handstand? Can you toe shoot to handstand? Can you stalder to handstand? Because why are you doing those things? So you can shaposh and go into the shaposh family. Why are you doing the shaposh family? So you can go into the Tkatchev family. And so this is the training path into the Tkatchevs. You need to in-bar handstand, okay, to be able to get there. Doesn't matter if it's a toe on, and look at, you can turn out of it. There's the toe on with a full turn. Okay, there's an in-bar. And so then it goes into, well, before I can, support circle essentially to handstand, okay, what do I need to do? Well, you can throw yourself horizontally forwards using the same exact moment, whether you're doing it from a stalder, a toe on, a clear support position, you can do it all traveling forwards. And so forwards travel, okay? And that's all this is. So what does this turn into? Basically what the level 3 dismount used to be. I don't know if it still is because I don't teach a lot of level 3 anymore. But there you go. Now, that's the same exact throw that we just saw. So Tkatchev Family, it's undershoot. It's undershoot, which turns into the hiccup, the low to high bar. Anybody can learn that. That's not complicated. Gets the throw action you need. Then you take it to a handstand. So we have horizontal travel, then to vertical travel. Then you learn to shaposh, which is horizontal travel. Then you go to Tkatchev, which is vertical travel. And that's the entire family. Oftentimes, the undershoot is not developed well enough to then take it to clear up handstand, toe shoot, handstand. The undershoot is not developed because we're not thinking of how the skills build. We're thinking of levels. And the problem with the levels is that they don't build according to how skills build and the physics of the story. So the next family. So this is the next training path. The next training path is the long hang circle, the giant, okay? Now, this is a really big irk of mine, that baby giant right there. That is a baby giant. And the importance of a baby giant or three-quarter giant over the bar is basically everything. And I'm not going to go super far into it, but I am going to go back to this because I want you to see one position. Let's see if I can get there. Okay, I just noticed the pike, the toes up. Okay, that positioning, that is the tap for your giant, your layout flyaway. It's the tap for so much that you're going to see later on. You can freeze the video and find that shape in all the other clips that I'm going to show you in a second. So baby giant over the bar, three-quarter giant over the bar. We're getting into then a flyaway. So we learn the three-quarter giant over the bar. We get into the flyaway. Okay, so here we go. Flyaway, boppity boop, pretty simple. We get it from a cast off, okay, and then we get it from a giant. Now, she does not get enough pikey up, so she travels out a little bit more. Her tap is a little bit off, and if you watch the video, you're going to see her arch happens in her giant because she doesn't get to that pikey position. There's a little arch that happens in her giant because she doesn't really kick through that pikey position. Unlike this young lady, who, if you see, she does not have an arch. She just kicks all the way over and has that nice pike on the rise. There's no real arch happening over the top of the bar. She's doing that kick action that you would see in that three-quarter giant. Again, we see this nice kick action even into a turn. We see that nice kick action right there. Okay, notice that was our 3/4 giant kick. Okay, there's a 3/4 giant kick into the blind full. So this gets us to low bar to high bar. Look at that position right there. That was a lot like that 3/4 giant. This turns into our pack salto, which then goes into, can I do a 3/4 giant? Can I do a layout flyaway? Yes, you can. Now you need to do a pack. Now pack is very easy to teach because you can do the pack salto flyaway. You can do all of this, never catch the low bar, and just pike down to the ground. That's all you need to be able to do. Pack timer flyaway. You don't actually have to be able to do the pack, but you do need to know how to do this. It is kind of important. But then you can build into the pack. Go do it to a resi mat, then throw one of those beam mats over the top of the bar. It's thin enough that you can kind of block off of it, and then you just go pack. It's not very complicated. Pack is just an archy flyaway with a pike down. Simple. Archy flyaway with a pike down, just a leg stall. So again, that's a layout flyaway with an arch position, which you tell someone to never do, but they should learn how to do it. They should learn how to pike down into the fallout of that flyaway so that they can learn how to then bail. Now, the quarter position at the 45, her body's at a 45-degree angle, she's at the quarter turn. This becomes the point of then, why did I learn the pack? I learned the pack so that I can get myself into this position. I know where I am in outer space. Now I can make the quarter turn happen for this bail shoot over. So watch this drill. Bail shoot overs. So I learned the pack, then I learned the bail shoot over. She was segmented more in her body. So then we go, okay, look at that nice little drill. That's a pretty cool drill. He's just doing a nice little bail shoot over drill. Or is it? That's the key. Or is it? Because now we've entered the turning family. This is the turning family. So we've gone through the giant family. Now we're getting into the turning family. So the turning path. So this becomes everything that then builds into, what do we see here? Blind half. Look at the quarter turn at the 45-ish. Very similar to the bail. She's just staying on the bar instead of letting go of the bar. No segmentation. So you learn the shoot over with the quarter turn and with no segmentation, and then you stay on the bar and you just do a blind. No problems there. So this turns into the last training path, which is the double layout. Nothing super complicated here, but I do want you to notice something. That is the finish of what the pack timer would look like. Right here, pack timer flyaway, that's the end of it right there. So the pack timer flyaway actually would benefit you for the double layout, but you know, no one's thinking that far ahead, are they? Usually they just say don't do that stuff. We need to learn the double layout flyaway because if you have the energy to do the double layout flyaway, then you're gonna have the energy to do double doubles. You're gonna have, look at that, did you guys notice that piked position on the takeoff? Piked position, right? That's very similar to what our baby giant kick over the bar, baby giant over the bar basically did for us. Okay, so now we just say, okay, can I do a double layout flyaway? Well, can you do a double double? I don't know. Can you be like Shawn Johnson maybe and just do a little bit more Shawn Johnson in your life? That would be pretty dope if we saw more of this. I don't think this is really as hard as people think it is. I think the problem is that we set the training paths up wrong, and so it's not easy to build into it. I'm not saying that this is not a hard skill, but this is not, gymnastics wants to build. It wants to build into from one skill to the next skill. So we need a double flyaway. So here's our double back flyaway because we're gonna get into it. Now I'm just gonna point out something to you if we can get her to pause. Do you notice how her feet are dropped down, her knees are bent, okay, her shins and toes are not pointing. So she's not getting to that pike kick action that we saw. It'd be very hard to convert this into a double-double because her tap is off and wrong. So that again goes back into using, you look at a skill and you go, oh, you did a double back. It's like, yes, but can you do anything with that double back? Can I twist it? Well, probably not. This young lady actually has the pike kick up. So here she goes to pike kick up, boom, and she's got another pike. You got the, see how the toes are rising, the knees are rising. That's much better. Not how she tucks into position. There's something off there. But that's basically what we're talking about in the sense of the importance of building skills to skills. So there's 5 training paths, okay? 5 training paths. Kip Cast Handstand, Tkatchev Family, Giants. Giants turn into turning, which is your packs, your bails, then it turns into your blinds. And then you got double layout flyaway, which then comes from your double tucks. But your double tucks have to have the kick action that then can build into the double layouts. So why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because oftentimes we waste our time teaching skills that just aren't going to build into another skill. Oftentimes we spend more time developing a clear-up handstand than we spend time developing the undershoot. And so then the athlete doesn't really know how to progress from clear-up handstand to toe shoot handstand to stalder handstand, because the problem is that they've only locked in their brain how to go do a back hip circle, and then how to do a double back hip circle, and then how to do a clear up to a back hip circle. And they're not thinking about big picture skills. And they're locked in on and doing all these little micro steps. The biggest shift that happened in my training, and really what helped me unlock the speed of learning, is understanding that skills have to teach skills. So if you're not getting a skill and becoming proficient in a skill, then how are you going to get the other skill? And what we often have, at least I've seen this, and I think it's all over the internet, is a culture of drills and progressions. And we don't compete drills and progressions, and yet we have a culture of it. And there's awesome drills and progressions. There's a place for them. But for people who are coming into the fold of coaching and have not been around for a while and are trying to figure out, how do I teach skills, drills and progressions can oftentimes be a side quest that really doesn't get you where you want to go. And when a sport where the attrition rate, the drop-off rate, the quitting rate is so high, I think it's very important that we understand the value of teaching skills and getting skills to learn new and other skills. And so that's why I think these training paths are important, because when you understand how skills build into other skills, you see the relationship. This builds kind of a vision for where the athlete is going. There's only 5 training paths. It's not a lot. It's not a lot. It's like get training path 1, then get training path 2, then 3, or do them simultaneously. And if you think about time management, you just got to hit 5. I mean, that's 20 minutes. You spend 20 minutes on each training path a week. You're doing pretty good. You spend 40 minutes on each training path a week. That's pretty phenomenal. So if you think I only have 5 training paths to go down, and I just have to time allocate for those training paths, what type of success am I going to get? You're going to get a lot of success. And it's going to cut out a lot of the fluff and a lot of the wasted time and effort. I mean, how many athletes are working on back hip circles, front hip circles, I don't know, just menial things that don't matter. And yet they can't even kip yet. They can't even cast a handstand yet. Why are we not developing the bigger skills, the more important skills, and worrying about the other stuff? And I'll tell you why. I know exactly why we're doing this, because gymnastics has to market itself to the public to being a sport for everyone. And so what it did is it watered down gymnastics so that everyone could participate. But the problem is it actually created a learning curve that's basically impossible to get over. Because gymnastics is a time game. If you spend 6 months of your time developing a front hip circle, that's 6 months you could have been developing a kip. If you spend 6 months developing a stride circle, or some menial skill that you're not going to use again, you could have been developing that cast handstand. And so what gymnastics did was it traded off the things that actually matter for things that don't actually matter, but people can compete in, and it wasted their time. And so then what happens is you get an athlete at the lower levels competing, and that's great, but they quit later on because they can't get the bigger skills. It just takes too long. And the coach also doesn't know how to train the bigger skills because the coach has never gotten there, because the coach constantly has this fall off of athletes quitting, so the coach never ever gets the education. I want to challenge you with this. Yes, your athlete needs to compete. Yes, your athlete wants to perform well. But imagine the athlete who has a Kip Cast Handstand, do you really have to teach them how to back hip circle? Probably not. The athlete who has a Kip Cast Handstand, do you need to explain to them how to do a front hip circle? Probably not. The athlete who has a Kip Cast Handstand, do you need to teach them how to do tap swings properly? Probably really not, because to be able to do a Kip Cast Handstand, is going to require so much coordination, awareness, intentionality, that they're going to be able to do a lot of these things proficiently well enough. And so I would say that yes, these things matter. Tap swings definitely matter. There's a safety issue there. But at the same time, sometimes we over-obsess about stuff that really isn't going to impact the future. And that's what puts the delay on. And that's what we need to be very careful on, is how are we setting the athlete up for the success of the future so that they stick with the sport. 5 training paths. I think it's pretty simple. There you go. Have a great day. Good luck.